Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Last Week in Denmark. This is Katie and I am with the wonderful Dom this week. Have you been watching any football this week, Dom?
I know I should, but I wasn't.
I can just tell you, Aarhus has lost its mind. So it's like, I'm not a big football fan. I'm not sure if you can tell that already. But I find it confusing because basically Aarhus AGF have won by so much that even though there is a game tomorrow, they still technically have won. And apparently people are going to go even crazier than last week when it was a surprise that they won.
Wow.
Which confuses me. But yeah, basically, it's the first time in 40 years AGF has won one giant football party, basically, after winning the national championship. And everyone's lost their mind. There's so many things in Aarhus at the moment where, first of all, there's trash everywhere because people are out drinking all the time, just for a full week to celebrate other people's achievement, which also confuses me. But there's so much like, if you're wearing an AGF jersey, you get in free here and here, or you get a free drink. I'm like, I don't want to buy a football jersey just for that, but I might.
Yeah, but then if you buy the jersey, that's not a free drink anymore because you spent money on it
That's
anyway,
true.
right? So
it's also, they're not my colors, so I don't know.
No. Yeah. No, I've heard of it. I've heard that it's been really crazy in Aarhus, and it's like, yeah, like a historic victory. And I can definitely see the parallel here to, I mean, yeah, I don't watch football, but the Polish football team, they also have a history of not being the greatest at winning. So in Poland, we don't even have like a victory song. We have more of a song that we sing when we lose to make ourselves feel better.
We tried. Yay. Yeah, Ireland's the same. I think we're just used to
we're
not
all
being
winners
good at
here.
anything except rugby. For some reason, we're brilliant at rugby. But I remember when I don't remember what age I was, but Ireland got to the semi-finals of the World Cup. So really not that big of an achievement. The whole country lost their minds. Every Irish person still talks about it. So football does something special. I don't really get it, but I'm happy for people. But we have some good topics this week that I'm excited to talk to you about. So they are that international workers are playing an increasingly important role in keeping the economy running, a warning from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that summer flying is getting bumpier, and a major investigation into police practices has triggered some very harsh criticism. Okay, maybe they're not all fun. Let's start with the good one. So international workers are playing an increasingly important role in keeping the economy running in Denmark. So a new analysis shows that international employees contributed a record 386 billion DKK to Denmark's GDP in 2025, while accounting for 62% of all new jobs created last year. So there are now more than 425,000 international employees in the country, with the largest groups coming from Poland, Romania, and Ukraine. What do you think about that? Are we surprised? I'm surprised in the sense that there are so many, I guess.
Yeah, that's for sure. I was also reading that compared to the rest of the EU, Denmark has one of the largest shares of highly educated workers compared to the rest of the EU, where maybe there's a bit more low-wage jobs when it comes to people who have migrated. So I think that's very interesting. What's also interesting to mention was that in general, Denmark's GDP has grown last year by 2.9%. So in 2025, it was 3,036 billion Danish, which is quite a lot.
Why is Danish money so scary?
I know. Yeah, like, is it a lot? Is it not a lot? I think it's a lot. What I thought was interesting here is also what you mentioned, that international workers are responsible for how much was it? 62% of the growth in wage employment that year. And I think it's so interesting in the fact that politicians often use this as an argument, saying the migrants come here and they steal our jobs. And I think that's such an interesting thing to mention because it's a thing, I was reading a little bit about it. It's a thing called the lump of labor fallacy, where people believe that there's like a set amount of jobs in the economy and that if someone takes a job, that means another person doesn't have a job anymore. And I think this proves it wrong because the internationals were responsible for actually creating more jobs, because the more people work and the more people are productive, the economy keeps on growing. So I think this is really good news for anyone who has any, skeptical friends when it comes to migration, to show that we do contribute to growing the economy and bringing in more money into the state.
I don't know how many specifically negative things were said during the election, but there's always stuff about too many internationals or talking about immigration and all that kind of stuff. And then we've seen kind of a couple of failed attempts where Denmark has been like, come into the country. And then, people get here and they're like, no, we don't need you anymore. We only needed like 100 of you. And now the rest of you have to figure it out for yourselves. So it's good to hear as well that it's not like, it's obviously very positive, but as you say, it's not just that we're here and we're working and we're contributing. It's like we're actually creating new jobs as well, which I think is a story that often gets overlooked because, you see it every day, I think, on, say, the international groups on Facebook of like, I can't find a job. I have all these qualifications. I've been searching for this many months and I can't get like anyone to even talk to me, never mind get an actual job. And I think so many people turn to starting their own business. And then that starts to create more jobs, more space for other internationals to join in businesses. And it really is a lovely reflection of our community of kind of like, I'm going to come to this country, I'm going to try and integrate, but I'm also going to try and make it my own and then try and create the same opportunities for people like me within the country. So it kind of just strengthens that feeling of community amongst internationals. Like we're all from different places, but at the same time, we're part of something together, which I always really like.
For sure. And it's not easy, right? The language is not easy. Like settling in a new place is not easy. So I think the fact that there's so many internationals here that are thriving and contributing so much to the economy is definitely something to be proud of. And especially the fact that so many of us are in high knowledge, high skilled jobs. That is also quite unique on an EU scale.
We're great. You're right. Do you speak Danish, Sam?
I do, but I don't use it as much at work. I'm still at the stage where I try to have people not switch to English when I speak Danish, with varying levels of results. But
yeah, that's all you can
I
do,
try.
I feel. And I feel like it's, if you just say something small, like precis, they get really excited. They're like, oh my God. All right, so I think I went into work and I just said, come on. And it's my boss's boss. And she was like, you actually sounded kind of Danish. And I was like, thank you. It's one of the 10 words I practice regularly.
But it works.
So I have the lovely option of trying to introduce people to some Irish. And then they're like, ooh. And I'm like, that's how I feel with Danish. Thank you.
Because it's also quite a unique language, Irish, right?
It's so old that it just doesn't resemble any language now. It's terrible. It's sorry, it's beautiful in case there's any Irish people listening. But anyway, moving on to our next topic. I'll probably start with asking, do you have any holiday plans this summer?
I do, and I'm a little bit nervous. So, because I don't know if I'll fly. We're planning to go to Italy, where my fiance is from. But
oh, very nice.
We'll see if we'll go, I guess.
You can drive. It's only a day.
True. That's true. I mean, driving also, well, we could take an electric car, I guess, yeah.
So this is our second topic of the episode today, which is summer flying could get bumpier. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has warned that fuel shortages linked to the Hormuz Strait crisis may affect flights and local transport, especially outside Europe. Italy's in Europe. You'll be fine, hopefully. So travelers are advised to stay flexible, check insurance coverage for delays and cancellations, bring essential medicine and supplies, and follow updates from airlines and travel authorities. In Europe, experts warn that jet fuel stocks are nearing critical levels, meaning some cancellations could come from actual fuel shortages and not just higher prices. So it's pretty intense. And I know it's a bit stupid, but it just feels like something that can't happen in this modern day and age, in my mind. And I feel like this with all the war going on and just nothing getting resolved, everything getting worse. And it just feels like this is something that is in a history book and not happening right now. Am I just in denial? I don't know. I think I have a special kind of delusion where I'm just like, no, the world has moved forward. There are no bad things left to happen.
No, I think it is a thing that people believe, like, oh, we're in modern times, like wars are in the past, right? But yeah, unfortunately, every time I read the news and I think to myself, how much worse can it get? No way it can get worse, right?
Well, they find new ways.
Yeah, surprise. So, I know a few friends who had their flights canceled already. I think already last month and also this month, in May, SAS has canceled 1,200 flights. And there's nothing you can do. I also had a friend tell me that he had a flight booked And then he got an email saying, if you want to still fly, you have to pay extra, which I don't know to what extent that's legal, but I guess what can he do? Because it's just so expensive.
And what do you do? Like, it's so, as well, it's that kind of like, okay, if you get cancelled on the way over, fine. But what about the way back? And then you get trapped somewhere you don't really know, and you've probably spent all your money. Ooh, it's all very stressful. But I imagine, like, being in the airline industry at the moment is insane. Because I feel like a few months ago, there was like legislation kind of being introduced or considered to be more lax when it came to when airlines have to give you a refund or when they have to give you compensation for being late or delayed because of all the crazy weather. And it was kind of being deemed unfair. They were paying out a lot of money for these kind of delays. And I feel like it was about, like, I didn't like that news, obviously, because I think it's a bit like the bus. I'm kind of like, if it's going to leave late, it doesn't work. Why do I pay for that kind of thing? So I was a bit like, but it seemed like they were like, oh, we need to accommodate the airline industry a little bit. And now it's like, the planes literally can't get off the ground. So what can they do? And it's, yeah, like not unlike you, I have a trip home to Ireland booked in July. And I am like, should I go now? Like they say critically low on the fuel shortages, but I'm also like, how critically low? And it also makes me realize how little I know about planes. Like, where does the jet fuel come from? Obviously from the Hormuz Strait. Obviously that's where it is coming from, and that's the problem. But it is like it's critically low now. So how does it go up? I don't know. I'm realizing how little I know about all these things. I clearly just get on the plane, just off to my holiday.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we live in such a frictionless world where suddenly if there's friction, we're like, what? What do you mean? Like the plane just flies. Why does it not fly? Which I think also speaks to our privilege in a way. Yeah, one of the things that the Danish, what do you call it? Ministry of External, is it External Affairs? Is that what it's called? I think so. One of the things they were saying to do is like, if you do travel somewhere and you take some medicines or something, make sure to take more of it in case, like you said, you get stranded, because like we don't know what's going to happen. I think maybe one thing I would consider doing, and this is something we've covered in the previous podcast episodes, is there are so many beautiful outdoor places in Denmark where you can spend your holidays for free. And yeah, I think we've covered it many times. There's a website where you can look where there's different camping sites and outdoor shelters. So maybe this is the summer where we all just rediscover Denmark. Who knows?
Oh, I don't really sleep on the ground. That's not really my vibe.
No, me neither.
I'm much more of a hotel person.
Yeah, 5 stars, mimosas.
Where's the spa? This is a weird campground.
Yeah, exactly. No, I wouldn't go either. I'm just here advertising.
Okay, that's good. Yes, camping is very good for everyone except us. No. This is sponsored by
Exactly. Sponsored by the Nature Ministry.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right regarding the kind of the privilege of how many things have been disrupted by war, and the main thing is just like now my plane may or may not go for my holiday this summer. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe we're okay, even if the flights do get cancelled.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is scary when these kind of things reach Denmark, I think, as well. Like, I don't think it's been as much of a topic this year, but last year we talked so much about war preparations and, prepping the different bunkers that are around Denmark to make sure people have somewhere safe to go that's properly stocked. And it's kind of feeling the same of like, okay, I know it's a very minimal inconvenience, but it is like, these things are reaching across the world to us. We're not as removed from, say, the actions of America as I would hope, like it affects everything.
Yeah. The ocean dividing us is not enough. No. I think also one of those things that made me realize that we're really close to these things, another one of the guidances that I could find from the Danish government was that if you travel somewhere, there's a website, and this is not just for citizens, it's also for people who have like permanent residence in Denmark or just live here. There's a website called danskalisten.um.dk, and it's a service provided by the government, I think, where you can put your CPR number and show that you live in Denmark, and then tell them where you're going so that they have your contact information in case there's like a natural disaster or a war or a terrorist attack and they need to help you evacuate. It is scary that we might have to think about these kind of things.
Crazy. But then again, the privilege comes in again of like, we only now have to think about these things. Like anybody who's been in Ukraine has been thinking about this for years. And then we're just like, God, if I want to go on holiday to
Exactly.
this place, then I need to think about it. And we're like, oh.
Exactly. But yeah,
It
it's
is
happening
That's
everywhere.
true. Moving on to our final topic of the day. Not that this wasn't a lot of fun to talk about. There's been a major investigation into police practices, and this triggered unusually harsh criticism from state auditors, who warned that the handling of thousands of criminal cases risks damaging public trust in the justice system. The investigation found that around 13,000 cases were closed without any investigative steps, even though victims were told investigations had taken place. Auditors also found examples of serious crimes being registered under milder legal categories, making them easier to close, and politicians are now demanding reforms. Thank God. What did you think when you read this article?
I was honestly surprised because I thought the Danish police worked quite well. I think maybe if I were to share some of my opinions about the police, I might get canceled, so I'll leave it at that. But I thought the police here was working quite well. Like the few times where I had some need of it, it always came really quickly, but I never had a case there, so I never really had that kind of experience. So it was a surprise. I think maybe one detour I can add to this was basically this investigation was done by the National Audit Office, which is a thing that exists under the Parliament, I believe. And I kind of went down a rabbit hole on their website because I thought it was quite interesting that such a thing exists. And they actually audit a lot of things, which I thought made for quite an interesting read. They were, for example, other things that they audit nowadays is whether children in school learn enough Danish and maths, and whether pesticides are used responsibly in Denmark. So I just thought it was quite interesting that we have an organ like this in Denmark, and you can actually read a lot of interesting things on their website. So just thought I would add this as a detour of the topic, but
Did you know that the Last Week in Denmark newsletter is available in 8 languages? Hey there, this is Fionn from the Last Week in Denmark podcast, and every week you guys are tuning in to hear me and my fellow co-hosts talk about the top news of the week in English. But let's be real, we're all internationals, so not only are you speaking English every day, you're probably also speaking a bit of Danish, but you've probably also got your own native language as well, like the multilingual master you are. So why not treat yourself to the luxury of being able to read Danish news each week in your own native language? So head on over to lastweekdk.substack.com, that's lastweekdk.substack.com, and sign up for our newsletter delivered to you every single Sunday.
But going back, I did think,
yeah, it's quite disappointing as well. I similarly, in Ireland, the police have a really bad reputation. We call them the Gardaí, and they're kind of made fun of. There is a general, I personally actually have only had good experiences with them, but there's a lot of like, it only attracts a certain kind of person, and that would be your typical school bully or someone who wants to, be a dickhead, generally speaking. Whereas that's not my impression here. I don't feel like there's that same kind of disrespect for police, or I know my partner who's Danish, she's very aware of any police cars, even though I think she'd die if she tried to commit a crime, any kind of crime, even like not buying a bus ticket or something. So really, really disappointed to hear it. I also just think I really feel for those 13,000 cases, 13,000 victims, if not more, in the sense that if you've had a case in the last few years with the police and they've told you that there's been an investigation, now you're kind of thinking like, did they actually investigate it? And I do think the article was quite vague in the sense of like, what were the actual crimes? But these 13,000 cases did include more serious crimes. So you do kind of wonder, okay, what was it? And it's this weird as well, I guess in one way I understand, but in another way I don't. So say like, I'm a customer success manager. My job really depends on quick results and responding to customers and, numbers going up, things like that. But then to hear like the police were kind of the same. They were like, well, we wanted to close the cases faster, so we just didn't investigate at all. And it's like, well, that's not really closing the case then, is it? And I think particularly for a large amount of these cases, they did no investigative steps.
Exactly.
They just didn't follow up in any way, shape, or form. I'm like, why did you even write it down? What was the point?
Exactly. I mean, if you did that in your job, you would be fired, right? Because that's part of your job. And that was also what I think surprised me, was that in a lot of these cases, the police have informed the victim that an investigation had been carried out, but there was nothing that had been done. And yeah, I also couldn't find any details, understandably so, on what the cases were. But like you said, there was quite a lot of things about economic crime, but also like crime on dangerous people, which is concerning.
I think it's also, I don't know the details of this. It's something that my partner was telling me, but there's been a lot of kind of work done on predicting if someone is in a domestic violence situation and how that can progress to being murdered by their partner. And basically within Denmark, they've found that there is like a very specific set of steps, if we say, that if kind of like first they're violent, then if you leave, if these three things happen, there will be a murder attempt. And it's almost conclusive every single time. And it kind of, this is kind of where my mind went to, is like there's parts of Denmark that are doing such extreme investigations of like particular kinds of crimes. And then you have something like this where they're just like, yeah, we wanted to close it. We wanted the case closed number to look better. So yeah, we just didn't follow up. And you do kind of wonder the consequences of it. Like, I'm sure a lot of these cases are like someone stole a bike or someone didn't pay their taxes or something like that. But if there's even one serious crime in here, like, is there a dangerous person that's still out there that has just been, you know, let to go around? I think as well, I don't know, I've forgotten the name of the documentary, but there's a documentary on Netflix at the moment about a serial killer in Denmark. And I was watching it with my partner, and she was saying that, like, basically this woman went missing in a smaller town on Zealand, and huge reforms happened afterwards because of how bad the investigation was. So they just, because Denmark's so safe, they were just very chill about it. They were like, she's probably gone to her friends, don't worry about it, whatever. And then 3 years later, they found her body. And then there was another victim, and then eventually the guy was caught. And I think it's that kind of thing of like, if you don't work within the first 24, 48 hours of a crime, you're going to miss like that critical information, and it can be someone's life. It can be hundreds of people's closure. And it's kind of disgusting to just be like, oh yeah, we looked into this, or we're investigating, and then just have done nothing. So it's very,
Exactly.
yeah. And I see that it does, like, they're saying, you know, this really affects public trust. But it is like, now you're kind of questioning anything to do with public service. Like, if the police could do this, what's everybody else doing? You know, and kind of how much can you trust authorities? Like, it doesn't just affect how you see the police, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think what the chief of police was saying sort of in response to this investigation, basically what the chief of police was saying in response to the audit was that they receive 600,000 cases annually, and out of those cases, 13,000 are not resolved or not touched. And his argumentation was that, hey, we just get a lot of cases. But yeah, I think what is something to keep in mind, that what we say cases, but it is 13,000 probably people that have been hurt, or I don't know, maybe not always hurt, but something has happened to them in some way. So I think that is also something to keep in mind.
Mm.
And there was also a survey they were doing to the policemen and women and people when the audit was being done. And basically 61% of them have said that the reason they have skipped some cases was because there was pressure from management to do stuff faster. And in general, they were saying that there is a bit of a financing issue with the police, which, yeah, I thought was quite interesting, that basically in most cases, it usually comes down to the money.
Yeah, it always does, doesn't it? And I am a bit like, okay, I see what he's saying, that like 13,000 out of 600,000 isn't such a big number. But I think what's quite gross about it is that they told the people in these cases that an investigation was happening. I think it's fair enough to say in some cases, like, there's nothing else we can do, or this isn't something that's going to be pursued. It's obviously not great. It obviously, again, isn't great for public trust, but at least it's not finding out 2-3 years later, oh, maybe my case is the one they just ignored. Maybe, you know, I'm still worried about whatever happened, you know? And I think there's just not a lot of consideration. There's also, again, the vagueness of it. And this is obviously to like protect people, protect the police, protect privacy in terms of the matters of these crimes, but it is a bit like, have these people been informed that there's been no investigation, or does everybody just have to kind of sit around and guess? And then it is again that kind of thinking, you know, if I wanted to be quite pessimistic, if I think about crimes that are easier to solve or easier to ignore, are they the more complex cases? Are they the more serious crimes? Or like, how were these cases prioritized? Why were these ones pushed aside? Because if it's 13,000 bike thefts, I'm fine with that. But I find it, they didn't say that. And it could have been an easy way out if it wasn't the case, or if it was the case.
Yeah, true. I think if you were a politician, I would now cut this out of context and I would say, Katie is okay with bike theft.
Yeah. I hate
Keep
bikes,
on
clearly.
stealing bikes.
Just going to go around and kick them over. I don't even want to steal them. I just want to throw them in the river and see what happens.
Let's just kick them over. Yeah. I think also the weirdest thing about this whole investigation is that currently there is no Minister of Justice to help fix this because, like, we still don't have a government. So basically that auditory group, or what is it called? The National Audit Office, they were saying that as soon as we have a new Minister of Justice, they will give them, I think, 4 months to respond to this and fix it. So as soon as we have a new government, they already have one task, big task to do.
It's so crazy that we still don't have a government. I think this is the longest it's ever been, isn't it? That we've not had a government in Denmark.
I think so. The previous one, 4 years ago, was that. It took 6 weeks, I think.
We've lost track. It's been too long. But I'm also like, when did all these politicians get so dramatic and refuse to work with each other? Like, come on, just compromise. It's fine. But not my rights, just to be clear.
Yeah, I think it's also quite a unique situation where it is quite mixed. And I think the moderates, they do have quite a big negotiation card that they probably use. So it's interesting. I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't think we've ever had anything like that in Ireland. I don't know. It's also been pretty, I mean, again, it might just be me and my delusion, but I've kind of forgotten until someone mentioned it. I'm like, oh yeah, we don't really have a government right now. I feel like it was much more dramatic when like America shut down. Everyone was like, what are they doing? Whereas here it's like, figuring it out. No big deal.
Yeah, we're just talking. Like, there's
civilized conversations. No one will accidentally start a war in the middle of our government being down.
No, exactly. So we'll see what happens.
But anyway, it's been lovely talking to you.
Likewise.
Thanks so much for joining me.
Lovely as always.
Our episode. It's been a while.
That's true. And we're almost at the end of the season, actually.
I can't believe it. How is it May? I don't understand.
It does not feel like it.
But thank you everyone for listening as well. Until next time.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm looking forward to speak next time.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Bye.